Magandang hapon sa ating lahat. Welcome to Campus Ministers on Air, where we find God in everyone and everything under the sun. We will begin with a prayer.
Panginoong Jesus, ako ay nakikiisa sa iyong walang hanggan at walang katapusan. Sangkatauhang pag-aanay, iniaalay ko ang aking sarili sa bawat araw ng aking buhay at sa bawat sandali ng bawat araw ayon sa iyong pinakabanal at kagalang-galang na kalooban. Ikaw ang naging alay para sa aking kaligtasan. Nais kong ako'y maging alay ng iyong pag-ibig. Nais kong ako'y maging alay ng pag-ibig. Tanggapin mo ang aking ninanasa. Kunin mo ang aking handog. Malugod mong pakinggan ang aking hinaing. Itulot mong sa iyong pag-ibig ako mamatay. Itulot mong sa iyong pag-ibig ako mabuhay. Itulot mong ang huling pintig ng aking puso ay maging tanda ng isang wagas na pag-ibig. Ng isang wagas na pag-ibig. Ng isang wagas na pag-ibig.
Kasama natin sa hapong ito ang apat na magkakaibigan. Kaibigan ko rin naman sila. What do they have in common? All of them considered becoming a Cenacle sister. I will not say any more about that because they will tell us their stories. And we have decided who will begin, right? No, but first, let's meet all of them. Can you please say something about yourself?
Okay, ako po si Riza Carasig. Currently, I work as the director for programs and retreats of the Center for Ignatian Spirituality.
I'm Rina, Simpas, and currently director of the Loyola School's Office of Campus Ministry at Ateneo.
Okay, hi. I'm Luz Cometa. I'm an IT practitioner, pero at the moment, I am more focused into giving trainings and career coaching.
Hello, I'm Thea Quintos. Currently, I'm the director of the Center for Scholarships and Grants of De La Salle College of St. Benilde.
Okay, so we will start. I will just ask the first question and then these women will take over. I think it would be good for us to know your vocation story. What were you doing before you decided to explore life at the Cenacle? And what attracted you to the religious life? Also, why the Cenacle in particular? Well, actually, we all have decided who will begin, di ba, Rice?
Okay, before I got to know about the Cenacle, I was teaching at DLS-CSB University. I was a faculty at the math department. And at the same time, I had a small business at the time. I have to make mention of Lingkod. Yung community namin ni Bruce used to belong to this community for young single professionals called Lingkod ng Panginoon. That really encouraged us to pray for our state of life. So doon yung nag-umpisa. So meron kami state of life discernment. And then, I remember at the time, sabi lang sa amin, pag wala ka naman masyadong attraction kung any particular vocation, kasi tatlo lang naman yung pinagpipilian, di ba? Marriage, single blessedness, or religious life. Pili ka na lang. May 3 months kami na, na state of life discernment period. So, about to finish, sabi ko naman yatang gustong kumandang dalaga, yan tuloy. Hindi ko naman din yata gustong magmadre. Parang pinaka-convenient na tingin ko, pag-aasawa. I would usually do my prayer time. Once a week lang kami dapat na nakafocus doon. Break time ko, doon ako sa PGP Chapel na Lasal nagpe-prayer period. Sabi ko, huwag mo na ngayon. Sa Thursday na kasi pa-finalize ko na. And then Wednesday, we have what we call this, the action group meeting every week. And then, very casually, yung kasama ko sa lingkod was telling me about a friend of hers na kasama daw niya nun sa SGV, very promising ang career. And guess what, Rice, where he is now? Ayun, pumasok na seminaryo. The minute I heard that, I don't know, for some reason, may iba siyang dating sa akin. Parang I felt, tomorrow na kasi ako gagawa ng decision ko. Sabi ko, para yata hindi. There was just something that I felt stopped me from making that choice. So I had to tell that to my co-discerner, leader sa lingkod. And then sabi niya, well, in that case, maybe it would be better for you to just visit this congregation kasi baka they can help you. Ang idea lang doon is to help me further discern. I inquired, tumawag ako sa Cenacle. Nagkataon, meron silang retreat ni Sister Bubbles, yung Crossroads. So that was the first time. That was hindi naman ako optimista. So hindi ko talaga kilala yung Cenacle na yan. I discovered even na may pinsan pala ako doon. So si Sister Manny, I didn't even know, no? The minute I saw Sister Bubbles, sabi ko, pwede pala magmadre na walang habit. To be honest, that was what attracted me to the Cenacle. Kasi I couldn't really imagine with the heat in the Philippines, nas magsusuot ako ng belo, na ganyan. I guess yun yung isang reason kung bakit ako pwede magmad. Akong penguin na parang ayoko talaga noon. Pero nung nakita ko talaga si Sister Bubbles, cool na cool ako. Kaya ko yung denim skirt na yan. Kaya ko. To be honest, yun. It would appear like, napaka naman ito. Napaka-trivial naman. Pero magagawa ko. Tsaka ko nakita ko, pwede naman palang ganun. And then, I continued. Nung nakita ko, I got to know more about the Cenacle. And then, I talked to Sister Bubbles. And I asked her if she could accompany me. Because I was discerning. That was 1995. That was the time when I began to get attracted to the apostolate, to the charism of the Cenacle. So, in other words, nung una, wala nga akong alam what the Cenacle was all about. It was about accompaniment, giving, something not so different actually from what we were doing in Lingkod because we were actually accompanying people. I went on with my discernment and then the year after, I decided to continue with it, applied for the aspirancy program. So I was together with these 3 ladies and Perry and also
Susay.
and also Susay. So we were 7 pero 6 kami dito sa Manila. Si Perry nasa Cebu.
So ikaw ang pumili, Rice, kung sinong susunod.
Pipiliin ko yung bunso namin. Ang boss mo, Rofel. Rina, it's your turn.
I'm glad to follow you, Riza, because what really attracted me to the religious life was first the habit and then second, kindness. As a child, I really was drawn to the religious life. Why? Because when I was in grade school, I was under the Dominican Sisters, so Dominican College. You know their habit? Penguin, di ba, Riza? So todo, balot na balot. And the sisters there were so kind. And so that attracted me, the habit and then the kindness. In high school, I moved to St. Paul College, Pasig. Aba, umigsi ang habit. Hanggang tuhod na lang. this is even much better. Sabi ko, okay, And so in high school, I was also exposed to the apostolates of the sisters, to our religious organization. And all the more I got attracted to the life of a sister. Lagi yung paglilingkod, yung compassion, the kindness, for others, and the habit. When I moved to college, I went to Ateneo, and I met Sister Rayleigh, a Cenacle sister. No habit, the best. So it was the best. Sabi ko, sige, dito tayo, I knew I was so attracted to the religious state of life. Sister Rayleigh also was our guide for the prayer sessions in ACMG, Ateneo College Ministry Group. And then ASIL also for some time. And getting to know her, getting to be accompanied by her also had an impact on me, personally and even in terms of my vocation discernment. So I graduated from college, 1 year in JVP, 2 years in St. Paul Pasig. And when I was there in St. Paul teaching, I visited Sister Rayleigh, sa Ateneo because it's been a while. So I wanted to touch base with her. And then, tamang-tama, there was an opening for a campus minister. And so I was invited to join the team. And it felt right to make that move. And so I did. And lo and behold, it was also the time of the aspirancy. To me, that time was when it became urgent to respond to that discernment question. Is this really the life? But of course, I had my boyfriend in college. I had my boyfriend in college, etc.
Klaro
Meron
ko
ng
yun.
kwento. Huwag na natin sabihin, okay?
Parang kilala ko yun rin.
So, may bahaging ganoon, That time, it was an urgency for me to face the question, the attraction towards the religious life. And Cenacle had a calling for me. Fast forward, even if I decided not to push through with the Cenacle life, I'm still very, very thankful kasi hanggang ngayon, tayong lahat, very, very close to the Cenacle. And in fact, in terms of what we do, what I do at this time, it's still in the ministry of accompaniment. It's still spiritual formation. So, hindi siya nalalayo. For that, I'm very thankful. So, ang susunod. Okay, Thea!
I will start with the fact that I'm in college. I was in the fourth quarter storm. I belong to that generation. Makibaka, EDSA Revolution, Cory Aquino, that whole thing. I think I was third or fourth year high when Sister Stella L came out. That's such an iconic movie for my generation and those who came before me. And it was just very clear that it seemed the only way to respond at that time for me was to go to religious life. Ang dami kong galit sa mundo at that time, no? But I took up education in UP and I ended up teaching. And I had a boyfriend at that time. And the one thing I kept telling my boyfriend was, I want to do volunteer work, but I do not know where to go. And he goes, but if you do that, that means you're going to be separated from me. And I go, yes, it's a no-brainer for me. I mean, that was how I would talk. I mean, all of you know me, that I can be that blunt. And at some point, I guess he really recognized that I was very serious about wanting to do volunteer work. So one time he goes, what are you doing this Saturday? He goes, nothing. He goes, tara. Sabi niya, I just wanted to meet someone. So this was Christmas break. And he took me to meet this guy, Pim Daza, who was a Jesuit volunteer at the time. And he had come home for Christmas break. And we were at the party just for me to meet Pim. And for Pim to talk to me for about 15 minutes about what JVP is. And then right after that, we left the party. And I was just quiet for the rest of the evening. And part of me just knew that, okay, I think I am going to go for JVP. So of course, when I told my father and mother about it, my father went ballistic and refused to let me go, because I would go to the mountains and not come back to Metro Manila anymore. He really thought I would end up with the NPAs. And I found myself, okay, sabi ko, I was just so sure JVP was a right thing for me. And then my boyfriend at the time goes, at 23, that's age of emancipation. You do not need parental consent anymore. So I waited for 2 years. I was teaching here in Manila. I waited for 2 years. At 23, I was really going to tell my father, sign this. Whether you like it or not, I'm going on JVP because I don't need your consent. But in the process of those 2 years of praying for God's guidance, by the time I asked again for JVP, my father just let me go. Now, why am I telling this story? Because it was in the mountains of Bukidnon that so many of my misconceptions about myself, about religion, were just torn down. And I totally fell in love with God in the mountains of Bukidnon. And I guess that is why the JVP experience in Bukidnon is always, it's extremely significant to me. Because it's very clear to me, when people ask me, where did you find God? It is in the mountains of Bukidnon. But when I went back, I went to a different congregation, ICM, Immaculate Heart of Mary, because they were missionary and I always wanted to travel the world. So I had reached the point of I was about to enter and I could not sleep. They had given me the list, things to prepare, all these things, and I could not sleep. I could not eat. It was the kind na hindi ako in love eh. It was the kind I was just in so much turmoil. Finally, I went to my uncle who was a Benedictine priest, God rest his soul, and I asked him, sabi ko, Tito, this is how I feel. I'm sure of the religious life, but why do I feel this way? And he goes, if you're not at peace, don't continue. Because that's the only thing you need to know at this point. So I went back to the sisters, the vocation sister at the time, and told her, I think I'm not ready. So I let it go. I went back to work for JVP. And Sister Rayleigh at the time was part of our formation committee. So I had a bit of contact with her. She was with campus ministry in Ateneo, all these things. Then I just had this wild idea of going on an 8-day retreat. So I contacted her. She set me up with Bubbles. And when I stepped into the Cenacle for that 8-day retreat, I got so scared because the moment the door closed behind me and I saw the garden, I just felt that I had come home. And it was so frightening because it was so deep. The feeling was so deep that I had come home. And I cannot forget Sister Bubble's face when she asked me, so when was your last retreat? And I go, I've never been on a silent retreat and I was going on an 8-day retreat. So where I am now in terms of my relationship with God and my prayer life, it will always go back to that first 8-day retreat I had with Bubbles. That Bubbles is very significant to me in terms of that. She really taught me how to pray. I was sure of my relationship, but in terms of really how to pray and deepening that relationship, I will really owe that to Bubbles. Fantastic mentor she is. Fantastic spiritual director.
Thea, parang nandun ka sa retreat na inattendan ko.
Mahaba pa buhok ko nun.
Imagine niyo si Thea, naka-ponytail.
Very
No,
long
I cannot
hair.
imagine.
My hair was up to my shoulder blades.
Hindi ko rin ma-imagine. Estudyante ko yan si Thea.
No, hindi mo ma-imagine. You walking around in a ponytail with a lavender umbrella full of frills.
Oh, wow!
Around natin. Anyway, Luz, ikaw, kwento mo.
Sige. Wow, na-enjoy ko yung pakikinig sa kanilang tatlo. Because I realized there are stories that I didn't know about them. And we've been like friends for many years already, no? And thank you for that.
24 years na ata tayo
24 years. Wow, silver pala next year.
25 na nga.
Wow, tagal na, no? So yun, thank you, no? Na-refresh ako sa mga stories nila. So pareho nga kami ni Rai, no? Na galing kami sa lingkod. Kasi nung napasok ako sa lingkod, so it's a charismatic prayer group. Pag gano'n, medyo high na high ka. So I was really high in your relationship with the Lord, yung gano'n, no? Lahat na lang yata ng religious books, bibilin mo, you really like binge read para dun sa mga yon kasi you're so fired up. And one of the books actually was really instrumental in a way, no? I bought that book, yung autobiography ni Saint Teresa of Lisieux, no? The Story of the Soul. Sobra talagang dating sa akin noon that I wanted to be a Carmelite sister. Punta ng Lipa together with my family. You write your prayer request, and then I even requested for a nun, and then I talked to her, and then I kept on asking her, you pray for me, because I will be one of you. She said, pray for your vocation first, no? But you promise, sister, you pray for me, okay? Tapos, I was with my parents and my high school friends. Part of it also was, sige nga, pray for it nga. Wag mo puro emosyon. Nag-search in naman din ako. So, 21 or 22, I was so attracted to the story of Saint Teresa of Lisieux. I'm so drawn to it na I wanted to be a Carmelite. So, search in ako. Iba naman yung mas active Carmelite. Hindi ko ang daming tao, ang dami sa search in, no? Hindi ko matandaan, may merienda pero parang hindi ko gusto. Parang tipong gano'n, no? Alam ko lang, I didn't like it. At that point, I knew I was searching for some direction. And then one of the sisters in Lingkod, kasi bago ka pumasok sa Lingkod, there's like a program called Christian Life Program, no, CLP. And I was part of a discussion group. Yung isang sister doon, a woman in that group, in the discussion group, just went to a retreat in Cenacle. Ang title ng retreat, Life Direction. reflection retreat. Sabi ko, ay, kailangan ko yan. I need that. Kailan ba yan? So, wala pang cellphone noon, no? Kailangan yung number, sinulat pa niya. Baka hindi na alam nila na ganoon dati. Sinusulat sa notebook yung number nung tatawagan mo. Kinonta ko. And true enough, merong next run ng Life Direction. Director at that time was si Sister Fran. So, Sister Fran, I told her my story that I wanted to become a Carmelite. There's a fire in me na I really want to be a Carmelite. Naku, hindi na niya ako tinigilan. Parang linggo-linggo na lang, tinatawagan niya ako sa office. Si Sister Fran. If you know Sister Fran, ganun siya ka-persistent. At that time, I don't think nag-final vows na siya. No? She was really persistent, and then I find it very nurturing in a way. No? She will always ask me, how are you? How is your prayer life? And then she will invite me to retreats. She will invite me, I'm available this weekend if you want to go just for a directed retreat. There's a room available. So I guess it's not really the attraction to the life of the Cenacle, but to what I have experienced from a Cenacle sister. Right? I think that was really something that drew me to the Cenacle, right? So I forgot about the Carmelite, parang tipong gano'n, no? Baka dito nga, no? Kasi I remember almost every month, I would go to the Cenacle for a silent retreat with Sister Fran. She would really make time for me. So that's my simple story of how I got to really explore more the Cenacle.
Sino yung
That's it.
Sister Bubbles na yan? Banggit kayo ng banggit ng
Yung
Sister
kumakanta.
Bubbles na yan.
Kanina rin.
Siya yung
Sa
kumanta
opening
kanina.
prayer. Sa opening song. Sila ni Susay.
Estudyante ko siya nung college siya. Mahabang-mahaba pa buhok niya. Kaya ako, naging malapit sa Cenacle. At si Thea, naging estudyante ko.
Postulancy yun.
Postulancy, oh. So anyway, yung formation ng Cenacle, maganda sigurong malaman, kumusta? How was your religious formation experience? Kumusta ba? Rina, ikaw, kumusta?
Particularly on the aspirancy, something that I really appreciated with that program. We would spend weekends in the community, and then part of it also is really immersing ourselves in the retreats, the different retreats. And what I appreciated was the time really for reflection and prayer. It's something that helped me get to know myself more and get to know God more. The programs that Cenacle offered back then, nalala ko si the Sister Angie with MBTI, di ba, running the MBTI
Oo, ginawa
retreat,
natin yun.
di ba?
Yeah, oo.
Enneagram with Sister Malen,
Enneagram.
another retreat with Sister Bubbles. And then, of course, there's spiritual direction. And then, what I also loved about the Cenacle is what Thea mentioned earlier, no, yung pagpasok. And pagpasok mo na Cenacle, you felt like you're home. I felt that too. I'm home. And until now, no, even if I did not become a sister, Cenacle will always be home.
Yes.
I found myself and I found my God who loved me so deeply and so faithfully. And something so striking is the tabernacle of the Cenacle. In the chapel, you'll find that tabernacle made of kapis. It's a typical Filipino home made out of kapis. And the Cenacle house has been renovated, but the tabernacle has stayed the same. And to me, that's experience of Cenacle. Being home with this God, no, who's ever good, ever loving, ever faithful.
Luz, ikaw, kumusta yung formation mo?
Ngayon ko nga lang natatandaan ko ano yung information namin. I'm now recalling, no? Basta natatandaan ko, akala ko rin, Rina, it's every week. Pero Thea was saying every other week that we go to Cenacle, no? Nung aspirancy program. That for me was actually a good experience for me. Iniisip ko, bakit siya sa akin helpful in discovering myself, in discovering my God? Because it's intimate, I guess, no? Kasi yung size namin was konti lang eh. Remember my story in vocation, nag-attend ako ng Carmelites na active. Sobrang dami. Parang nawala ako doon. Pati si God nawala. Parang sabi ko, nasaan dito? Parang, di ba? Kasi siguro it's my personality, no? Parang mas nakakaano ako doon. Na konti lang, no? Intimate. I know the people that I'm journeying with. So I think that was the beauty for me, no? I slowly began to know the people that I'm journeying with, no? Sila yan. Sila Thea, sila Rina, sila Riza, sila Susay, sila Claire. So I remember that. I think the program allowed me to slowly immerse to not only to the life, but to possibly the people that I will be living with. That I think was a very very good experience for me, very enriching. And I know I began to discover myself more as I discover others in a more intimate way. Kwentuhan. Ewan ko kung natatandaan nyo, meron pa tayong evening noon, nanood tayo ng video, Agamulak, hindi ba? Formation
Na-direct
namin nun.
Rory, kapatid nila.
Quarter ng formation, Rofel. Kailangan na manood ng mga ganun.
Oy, palagay ko ako pa nagpahiram noon.
Kay Rory.
Oo.
Ako
Ah,
nagpahiram
talaga?
noon. Ano yon? Alam ko yung title noon.
Sa aking mga kamay. Ay, hindi. Si Dayanara Torres yun.
Hindi si ang pinanood ba niyo si Dayanara at saka si Aga?
It was at that time, it was either Dayanara and Aga. I forget that. Bakit, Or the one of sa aking mga kamay. Yung serial killer si Aga.
Medyo
Si Rory ba? Si Rory ang director
yun.
ng pareho. Alam ko yata kung bakit si Aga eh.
Bakit nga ba?
Eh kasi merong isang Cenacle sister na crush si Aga. Hello.
That one also, though it might seem like very trivial, that was an experience. That also actually was very helpful in my discernment, in my recognizing what life will I enter into. Ito ba yung kind ng life na papasukin ko? Saya kaya no? May popcorn ba nun? Parang walang popcorn eh. Kung nag-serve sila ng popcorn, baka nasa Cenacle ako.
Tuloy ka na. Sige, I'll take off from
Sige,
what
ikaw, Riza.
you said. Yung sense of community was just so real. And I think that was the aspirancy program gave us not only, in a way, parang a foretaste of what the community life is going to be. And it was helpful also for my own discernment. Kasi pinipicture ko na nun eh. Parang sa deathbed ko, okay lang ba mapalibutan ako nitong mga to? Yung parang pag pwede no? Parang, so it was really very helpful in my own discernment because I was already trying to picture, no? Kasi syempre, di naman yung tipong iniisip ko na pag ipapasok ako dito, di syempre, baka hanggang death na to, so okay lang ba na mapalibutan ako nitong mga babaeng to? And it was very helpful for me. Ano lang baka isipin nyo, kaya ka ba hindi tumuloy, no? Iba yung reason ko for not pursuing, no? But that sense of community that I felt and I was able to experience made me actually want the religious life all the more. So yun yung isang helpful dun sa program. And then of course, the discernment part. Kasi nasa Center for Ignition Spirituality ako. Pero nung age kong yun, akong pinalaman dyan, as I've said, hindi naman Jesuit education ang aking So parang, and it was really the Cenacle, no? The kind of discernment that I experience, yung there's freedom eh. Yun yung sa akin, yung parang hindi ako pinipilit, yung kalayaan sa pagpili nandoon. That was the kind of discernment that I experienced. Really ascertaining what the desires of your heart, being true, being real, no? Ito may isang beses bago ako lumipat kay Sister Rayleigh, kasi sa aspirancy I moved na to Sister Rayleigh. So parang tail end ko na yon ng SD ko kay Sister Bubbles, no? And kami ang medyo orientation namin mo na kung nagdi-discern ka, dapat hindi ka masyado nagkakagusto sa ganyan, etc. Kasi dapat focus ka lang, no? Alam mo to, Lucy, ba? And meron kami ng mga National Leaders Training Conference, so you meet so many people, ganyan. I remember, may conference kami noon sa Bacolod yata, yun, ng year na yun. Tapos, may mga pa-cute-cute ng ganyan. Beeper pa, uso nun, beeper pa. Page, ganyan.
OMG, beeper?
Beeper pa. So, may mga page. Kinukwento ko kay Sister Bubbles. Yun, sabi ko, Sister, alam mo, kasi, syempre, in the middle of discernment. Ang orientation ko nga, set aside, kasi nag-discern ka. Sabi ko kay Sister Bubbles, Sister, alam mo, meron kasi isa akong brother na meet dun eh. Beep ng beep, nadidistract ako. Tapos sabi niya, distraction yung pinagsasasabi mo, na-attract ka. Kaya ka na di-disturb kasi attracted ka dyan. Kasi kung hindi ka naman attracted dyan, kahit magtatumbling yan dyan, hindi mo yung papansinin. May point, no? Sabi niya, Rice, when you go through the discernment, explore all options. Because you wouldn't know what you would be missing. So you really have to explore. So pag inaya ka niya mag-date, go. So gulat ako doon. Yung mga parang sabi ko yung kalayaan ba. So nagpatuloy yun hanggang nung nag-aspirancy. There was just really so much freedom. Yun din yung maganda sa Cenacle, hindi hard sell eh. Gagabayan ka, pero if in the end you feel like this is not for you, walang guilt na, tapos kitang i-accompany ng matagal, hindi mo itutuloy. Walang ganon. That was very helpful. That went on in the aspirancy. Later na yung bakit ako hindi nag-decide mag-pursue. There was so much freedom in that decision. So, and I think it's their manner of accompanying that helped a lot. Tay, ikaw na.
Tay, ikaw yung pinakamatagal sa loob, di ba?
Yeah, I think among the four of us, ako lang yung nagmadre talaga eh. You know, I also cannot forget when I told Bubbles I wanted to enter into the aspiracy program. Doon pa yun sa dating lanay ng Cenacle. A very quiet smile, you know Bubbles, you know, a very quiet smile appeared on her face and she goes, "You have just added to a happy problem that we have. Because there are 7 of you who are into the aspirancy program and we've never had that many young ladies wanting to explore the Cenacle. But it's a happy problem. So when we were seeing each other over those weekends, most of us were assigned a room except for Claire. Claire was given a makeshift bed upstairs in the 2nd floor. If you don't remember, this was the bed she fell off. One time, I don't know if all of us woke up because of this kalabog in the middle of the night. You know, what was that? That was Claire. She was dreaming and she had fallen off the bed. I think more than anything, it was really an experience of community for the rest of us. For all of us, for that matter. But of the 7 who were part of that, I was one of the 4 who decided to pursue. I left as a junior sister already, you know. And if there's anything in the formation of the Cenacle that is extremely valuable, is yes, the freedom, but it's really that freedom comes from the deepening of a relationship with God. And it is constantly, always, forever in the context of prayer. Your prayer has to evolve as you evolve. You cannot stay forever fixed here and think that after 5 years, you're still praying this way. Because if you have not grown in 5 years in your prayer life, either you're not listening to something or you've really chosen to just be stuck there. By human nature, as we go through our stages in life, the way we pray will also change. And if we don't listen to the movement of that spirit, that's something we miss out on. The Cenacle really gives that in terms of formation. How do you evolve? How do you grow? How do you listen more deeply to God? Whether it's in structured prayer, more importantly in the day-to-day dealings that you actually have with people, with everything you experience, that is so ingrained in terms of formation. No? The training of the Cenacle, one of the methods is really on the spiritual exercises. I think that's very important to the church, not just to the Cenacle. Brilliant, really, how the Holy Spirit led Ignatius to write it, to put it the way it is. I mean, the guy was a military officer. And even if the languaging of the original spiritual exercises is very military, when you read the current and more contemporary translations, they make a lot of sense. But the specs is not meant to be read. It is meant to be experienced. And that's important because the training, again, one of the methods of the training of the Cenacle is through the spiritual exercises. Cenacle is rooted in scripture, the Cenaculum, where Mary, after the ascension, Mary went back with the apostles to pray in the upper room, which is considered the first retreat. So it is always in the spirit of prayer. And when you are praying, you are waiting. So it is really that sacrament of waiting. How do we wait? And if you really think about it, we're waiting so much in our lives. Waiting for our vaccine now. Waiting for the egg to become hard-boiled. Waiting for the bread to become toasted. Waiting for your coffee to cool so you can take it. It's so much a part of our lives. Pre-pandemic, waiting for the bus, waiting for the traffic light to turn green. It's all there, but I guess many times we miss out on that. And when you're in the Cenacle, it is really coming in touch with that whole spirituality of waiting. So at the end of the day, I would really like to believe the one thing that the Cenacle has gifted me, specifically, with is that the sacrament and spirituality of waiting. And second, really taking into heart what is written in the principle and foundation of the spiritual exercises, that which will deepen God's love and life in me. Therefore, whatever choices I have, I would like to believe the choices of these ladies here also, no? It is always rooted in that. That, all our choices, that which will deepen God's love and life in me. Because that's really what it is. Falling in love with God. Where is He is where I will be.
That's what attracted me to the Cenacle, yung falling in love with God. Ang ganda-ganda ng, ang ganda-ganda ng formation nyo sa Cenacle. So, syempre, ang susunod na tanong, bakit? Bakit hindi kayo nagpatuloy? Why did you not pursue the state of life that could have led you to become full-fledged Cenacle sister? Of course, si Thea nakarating doon, no? But maybe we can ask the ones who stayed a shorter time, like Luz.
I just want to take it off from what Thea was saying. No? I think really the gift of Cenacle is really that you experience God more and more in your life. Magaling sila doon to bring you to that place where lulong na lulong ka sa Diyos. Parang God is really something that you are craving for, something that you really want to be part of you. Anyway, pero bakit nga ba, no? Despite that, kasi gusto mo naman talaga mag-grow doon, ano? It was a difficult decision. It was a point wherein you're confused kasi you really want to give your life to the Lord, and the only way I can see at that time is to really enter the Cenacle. Para sa akin, that is really, baka ito yon, no? The formation actually, the exposure, yung pinaka-program nila actually help. Part of the program is that we stay in the Cenacle overnight, tapos meron tayo yung parang Holy Week, diba? I could not remember anymore if it's just the weekend or the Holy Week. May activity kami, so may naka-assign sa amin that you will do the marketing, you will do the preparation for the meal, and then dishwashing. So meron kami mga chores na assigned to us. And yung gabi na yon, first night yata yon. Tapos na kami mag-dinner and all. Tapos ando kami sa kitchen, and then pinupunasan na namin yung mga kutsara, tinidor, ganyan. Si Sister Rayleigh yata ang nagsabi noon, pakibilang yung kutsara.
No, si Sister Del yun.
Ladies, can you please count the spoon and fork? Ay, pipilang kami ng kutsara, tinidor. Sabi ko, gano'n, bakit pipilangan ng kutsara, tinidor? Gusto ko sabihin doon sa kasama ko, ilabas mo, baka may tinago kang kutsara, tinidor. And that for me, actually, simple lang siya, no? Parang, sabi nga nila, hindi naman lagi ginagawa yon, di ba? For me, ako yung na-assign doon. At sa akin pinabilang. Hindi siya nag-sit well with me because I think it speaks so much about structure to me. And I have come to embrace that that is not me. That there's structure, that there's time for you to wake up. It's the structure. And that for me, I think is, though it might sound so practical, wala man lang bang message from the scripture or something, but that speaks so much about how God created me, where I will feel more freer. I guess that's the term, where you will find more freedom to be who you are and how God created you. I guess that was really the discernment that I found. It was not something that I discovered right there and then when I made the decision. It is something that unfolded after I made the decision. The more you realize, oo nga, because this is me. Siguro it's that structure, no, that doesn't match with how I am, no. And God wanted me to be free. God wanted me to love more in the way that I am. Siguro yun yung sa akin. Ay, meron pala ako palang kukwento. Sorry Naalala ko noon, nagsasakristan kami niyan. Di ba nagsasakristan tayo noon pag mass? Hindi ako masyado familiar sa sa mass.
Order of the mass.
Tinanong ako ngayon ng pare, ako yung assign. Ano daw ba yung the creed na dinadasal? So hindi ko pa alam, ano ba, short daw or long? Hindi ko alam. Sabi ko, ay, Father, I will try to find out. Hindi ko na find out yun. Tumitingin siya sa akin na the creed na, nakayuko ako. Tinatanong niya. Alawan from me. Hindi ako tumitingin. Hindi ko alam. Bahala na kayo dyan sa So, as you can see, I had fun in the Cenacle. So, yun yung sa akin. I guess that's for me.
Riza, ikaw?
Okay, that was 1997. No? The end of the aspirancy program, I think, was right after the Holy Week that year. And the schedule for the entrance to the postulancy was May of that year. So up until January of 1997, I was decided to continue rather to the postulancy. But my father died in January of 1997. But I was actually being asked, ang tanong agad sa akin, Rice, tutuloy ka? Sabi ko, ba't naman ako hindi tutuloy? Hindi naman sa namatay lang ang tatay ko. But I really couldn't understand, ba't naman ako hindi tutuloy dahil namatay ang tatay ko. So, but as I continued, so that was from January to March, sabi ko, parang something yata is not right if I would enter at this point. I'm not even sure if I have fully grieved, if I needed to grieve with my family. I just tossed it to Sister Rayleigh in one of our SB sessions. Sabi ko, parang, alam mo sister, truth is, nung may nagtatanong sa akin, sabi ko, ba't naman ako hindi tutuloy? But there was also a part of me na, would this be really the right time? I remember Sister Rayleigh noon, sabi niya, pray about it, no? Kasi parang, and yun yung talagang naramdaman ko kay Sister Rayleigh na parang may sensing din siya na baka nga hindi ito yung tamang panahon. Pero baka hindi ito yung tamang panahon. Pray about it. So I did pray about it, and I was more peaceful with that choice not to pursue. So it was like a deferment. Yung tipong, hindi mo na ako mag-a-apply ngayon. Kaya ako tumuloy noong 1997. And it was open pa yon. I could come back the following year. Kasi hindi naman ako nagsabing hindi na ako tutuloy. Hindi lang muna ngayon. So maybe the next question, ano na nangyari kung hindi naman pala muna noon. At that time, so I continued with my work, with my business. It flourished. I went back to my service in Lingkod. And then a good friend of mine who was attending Lingkod at the time invited me to take the 19th annotation with CIS. So I took the 19th annotation, and then when I took that retreat, which ran for about a year, and then na-introduce ako dun sa mga spiritual directors who are lay, no? Sabi ko, yung ginagawa nila, actually, parang yun yung gusto ko talagang, I mean, of course, apart from not wearing a habit, it was really the charism of the Cenacle that got me so attracted to the congregation. And then when parang nag-open sa akin, pwede ko naman pala yung gawin na kahit hindi ako madre, no? Everything was just, feeling ko at the time, was just falling into place na parang hindi na option yung consider ko ulit yung religious life. Nakita ko how my life na talaga nag-flourish ako. May negosyo on one side, I was still teaching in Lasal, I was very active in Lingkod, I slowly got introduced to CIS. I just had to make a formal decision. It was for good. The decision not to continue was actually for good. So gradual yon, hindi yun yung bigla na ayoko na lang kasi sa Cenacle. Hindi yung ganun. But it's more of may na-open sa akin, may naipakita sa akin. And then an option actually came to surface, and I felt like I could still live the life that I would have wanted to live in the congregation, but maybe there are a few things here that might not be there anymore if I consider the congregation. Tapos, yun nga, yung sense of rightness, in the same way that I felt that sense of rightness when I considered the Cenacle, that sense of rightness was there when I made the decision that I would no longer pursue the religious life.
Rina, ikaw, exciting yata yung kwento ni Rina eh. No?
Ay!
Paigsiin natin to.
Nakabagbag ng damin.
Oo, maganda kay Rina.
What made me decide not to proceed with Cenacle was a realization of my own unfreedom. But it took that accident, while in the context also of that discernment, for me to realize that, and what was my unfreedom, that unconsciously, even if I was teaching, that all the states of life are on equal footing. All states of life are ways to holiness. But unconsciously, I elevated the religious life, the ideal, as the best. I was teaching Thea that time. I was teaching that in my classes. So all paths are equal footing. It really depends on how you live, how you respond to a life of love, to this God. But somehow, for me, my unfreedom was hindi. It has to be the religious life. And ang madrama doon kasi na-aksidente pa muna ako, that was my cannonball experience.
Yeah.
This year is the Ignatian year. Okay, we're celebrating the 500th year since the conversion of Saint Ignatius. That was my cannonball experience. And that opened up so many things about myself and about my God. That God will not love me any less because I did not become a sister. My God wanted me to bloom given the desires that I have, that I carry in my heart. So, realizing that, I made a decision. Nag-Holy Week retreat, di ba? Dahil pa naman, naka-crutches pa ako eh. I don't remember that Holy Week, crutches pa talaga ako, etc. But going through that discernment and then the decisions, I will not push through. Was that a difficult decision? It was difficult because Cenacle was so attractive. It was something so good. Yet, I had to be honest and to be real to myself, to God, and to others. So that's part one. Okay, so I decided not to push through with postulancy, but aspirancy also was the time that someone made himself very present, and was very persistent and persevering, declaring, his serious intentions, no, to a life of commitment. Mukhang malakas siya sa dos. Malakas siya sa Diyos, no? At any rate, yung muna, tinawid ko muna yung decision tungkol sa Cenacle. And then later on, made also a decision about my ex-boyfriend now, my husband, James, no? Ito ba, no? This life. And so later on, I made a decision, no? The calling for me, the best way that I can also love and serve God and others is by way of committing my life to this marriage to James, and the family that will be given to us, and also the ministry. Kasi aksidente di ba? Ano yun life and death para sa akin. And so, nahilig talaga ako. And so, what really matters most at this time? And I realize the same thing now that we're in this pandemic. What are the essentials? And what matters most? And to me, it really is allowing this God to love me in the context of the realities of my life, and at the same time, expressing that love to this God by way of loving those entrusted to my care. And so I found myself in this vocation, happily in this vocation. Is married life, family life easy? No. No, it has its own ups and downs, but the forever yes is made up of the daily yeses. And I say yes to this vocation. Salamat.
Kaya naman, hindi nga Mother Therese, pero Daughter Therese naman, di ba?
Correct. Of course.
Correct, di ba? So, ikaw, Thea.
Ako? Di ba earlier I said in college, yung madami akong galit pa sa mundo. And that was very significant because in the process of formation in the Cenacle, they really don't leave any stone unturned, especially in novitiate. And it reached a point that really a lot of my anger was coming out, and I had to ask for help. I knew, and even my novice mistress knew, this was already beyond spiritual direction. So on my second year of novitiate, I started psychotherapy. And I was in therapy for 3.5 years. Very difficult to really look at the darkness inside. But while I started therapy in novitiate, I did take my vows, my first vows as a junior sister. As I was living religious life, I was also going through therapy. And then on the third year, we were going to renew our vows. Medyo patapos na yung therapy at that time. Therapy, as I said earlier, with novitiate where they do not leave any stone unturned, in therapy, talagang ikakayod pa yung mga stones na yan. And whatever is there, it's free. You are the one who's going to take out all the moss, all the dirt, whatever. The therapist just helps you, equips you. But in the process of doing that, I really had to confront many things. I guess one of the basic questions I had to ask is, will the structure of religious life deepen God's love and life in me? And that was a question I did not want to answer or confront. But I remember waking up many nights, and that was the question I was with, But I was, but I really love the Cenacle, as in wholeheartedly, So we entered into our confirmation retreat for renewal of vows. This was in October. And on my fourth day, the one that the scripture given to me, all of you are familiar with this, John, and Jesus asking Peter 3 times, do you love me? So I was doing a contemplation, an Ignatian contemplation, it was all there. The fire, early morning, dawn, blah, 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 composition of place and everything else. And Jesus posed that question to me. Thea, do you love me? And I go, yes, Lord, I love you. And his response to me was, feed my sheep outside of the Cenacle. And 3 times he asked the question, 3 times I responded, 3 times that was his response. Feed my sheep outside the Cenacle. And in the last portion of that, again, that scripture passage of you will be led where you do not want to go, diba? He's telling that to Peter. It was really finding Jesus tying a rope around my waist and pulling me out of the gate of the Cenacle. So when I went back the next morning, I told that to my directress, spiritual director of the time, and she was just looking at me. Like, again, I cannot forget her face. And I was the one who said, I think we are shifting this to a discernment retreat. By the end of that was the 4th day, no? So by the end of the 4th day, I knew where God wanted me to go. And I had asked permission, that was October, if I could leave in Advent. So it gave me time to prepare my family. And the kind of preparation was very physical, no? It was also preparing myself, I guess. I was packing my things slowly, and every weekend asking my family to pick up my stuff. So they were seeing my things slowly coming back into the house, and I was emptying my room. I will be very honest in saying that leaving the Cenacle broke my heart. And when you have had a heartbreak, everything that comes after that is just pure goodness. And that is why I really live that whole thing of that which will deepen God's love and life in me. Because everything that has followed that decision to listen to the Spirit and everything that came after leaving the Cenacle has really just been a total deepening of God's love and life in me. Parang mabigat, no? Pero hindi eh. I guess at that time, sobrang bigat niya para sa akin. I think it was really a heartbreak for me. But everything that came after was just so good. And everything was really just spirit-led. I'm in Benilde now with scholarship, no? But when I first entered Benilde, I was with the Center for La Salle Ministry. That's the equivalent of campus ministry. And there were 10 wonderful years, really, of doing formation work with the lay, of so many things. But when I hit 50, I really told God, when I was about 48, 49, I really told God, teka, tapos na, pagod na ako sa constant overnight. Baka pwedeng pahinga na rin. I will still do the ministry, but can it be in a slower capacity? And it slowly unfolded until I was transferred to scholarship. I did not ask to be transferred, but it slowly unfolded in itself. So it is really trusting in the goodness of God. And really, it is that. It is the goodness of God. Which, by the way, is what Mother Teresa of the Cenacle says. God's goodness is in everything. And if we cannot see that, then I don't think any of us in here have ever really understood what the Cenacle charism is. If we do not see God's goodness in every day and in almost everything.
Yeah, ang ganda, Thea.
Oo nga, ang ganda. Ang
Yeah,
ganda-ganda
ganda,
kasi.
Thea.
Ang ganda-ganda ng mga kwento nyo, lalo na para sa mga kabataan ngayon na naguguluhan, saan ako pupunta, especially during the pandemic. Mas nakakabaliw, di ba? Saan ako pupunta, anong gagawin ko? Pero ang ganda ng kwento nyo kasi nakita natin na meron kayong pinasok, may sinuong kayo na maganda, pero meron palang iba pa. Pero ang magandang tanong ngayon kasi, at siguro makakatulong din dun sa mga nakababata na nakikinig sa atin. Yung pinagdaanan nyo, I mean, how does it make a difference now in the life that you have decided to lead? This whole experience in the religious life, how has it made a difference in the life that you are now leading? So hindi ako tatawag, sino na lang yung mauna?
Ako, sige. Una
Sige,
ako.
Luz.
Kasi I was listening to Thea, Riza, and Rina kanina. I was trying to really put words into the effect of the religious life or really pursuing Cenacle, no? Ang sa akin, the whole experience actually of being with the Cenacle trained me to actually see God in my day-to-day, to sense His presence in my life. Yun, na-train yung mata ko, na ma-notice ko ang Diyos kung saan, na maramdaman ko ang kilos na ito Diyos to, galing to sa Diyos. Or hindi, kailangan ko pandasalan. I think that kind of a disposition towards life, no, that I think is what I got from this whole experience of pursuing a religious life, being trained in how to experience God and how to sense if that is Him or I need to pray more. So yun, sa akin yun. And malaking bagay yun para sa akin, no? Kasi I didn't know na after making a decision on the Cenacle, that there are many more life experiences where I will need the gift that I got from the Cenacle, no? The discernment, the knowing God, and really just falling in love with the Lord.
Yeah.
You know, I work in a school now, no? So we, of course, the day-to-day with our students. At ang dami kong kwentong naririnig. Ngayon, syempre, karamihan ng kwento nasa email or biglang hihingi ng tawag sa messenger or whatever. Marami sa kabataan ngayon ay ang lalim ng kalungkutan, ang kaba, pangamba, anxiety, stress, depression, name it. Lahat naman tayo hindi nakakawala doon. Contextualize lang na. Lumaki ako nung kapanahonan na ang nanay ko ay hindi nagtatrabaho. So alam ko yung pakiramdam na pag uwi mo ay nandyan ang nanay mo. High school ako nung nagtrabaho na siya dahil sa pangangailangan. Pero ang karamihan sa kabataan ngayon, hindi ganun yung nakasanayan nila. Kasi ang henerasyon ngayon, working parents. Karamihan at least. Nung pumasok yung pandemya sa buhay nating lahat tayo nag-adjust na ang pamilya ay nandyan, lahat ng tensyon, lahat ng away, lahat ng realidad ay hindi mo pwedeng takbuhan. At napakahalaga na may panghawakan sa kalooban. Kasi lahat nga ay dumadaan sa pandemya. No excuse yan. Mother ka man, father, teacher, single person, lahat na lockdown, lahat na quarantine, lahat may anxiety, lahat may stress. Nag-iiba lang yung level at yung konteksto. Pero uulitin ko na napakahalaga na may panghawakan sa kalooban. Sana ang hinahawakan ay nakaugat sa Diyos. Kung wala yung relasyon pa sa Diyos, pwede naman ma-develop yun. Paano? There's a lot online, even just listening to religious music, praying, reading prayers, kung hindi alam kung paano magdasal, pero everyday gawin yun. Kahit walang sense, dadating ang punto na ang mismong panalangin ay may mangyayari sa kalooban. At kung hirap na hirap talaga, I don't know, there's Campus Ministry of Ateneo to get in touch with, and I'm sure they will help you. Any one of us, I think, in this room would be willing to help people. It's just a matter of connecting. But ultimately, at the end of the day, to also believe in yourself na kaya mo ang pinagdadaanan mo. Mahirap man, masakit man, masaya, maniwala at magtiwala sa sarili. Kasi doon mag-uumpisa ang lahat. At doon mo makikita at mahahagkan ang Panginoon.
Salamat, Thea. Riza?
Ang Tagalog ko ha, teacher ko si Rofel, alalahanin mo.
Estudyante ko yan. I'm a proud
check
teacher.
yan.
Sige.
Riza?
This is really more of a message for the young ones.
Yes, yes.
We've experienced. It's very important to listen. To listen to one's desires. Yan yung isang talagang niyakap ko at talagang in-embrace ko na desire. I remember again Bubbles saying, just listen to your desires, no matter how seemingly shallow, sensual, just listen anyway, because that would lead you to that desire which is deepest. And times now are very different. There's so much noise around us, which makes listening all the more difficult. But I guess for the young ones, it's just to really to encourage them to pay attention to whatever stirring you have in your heart. Mahirap makinig, pero if we are able to pay attention, then that can possibly lead you to that desire which is really deepest. Kasi ako talaga, isa ko rin natutunan, our deepest desires and God's desires for us, wherever they meet, yun yung ating purpose na i-live. So parang, don't be afraid to listen. Minsan din kasi nakakatakot. Diba? Parang napapangunahan na baka dalhin ako kung saan. And I'd always say na kung hindi ko tinry ang Cenacle noon, kung hindi ko tinry ang religious life noon, that this would remain to be a question na left unanswered. And I couldn't just imagine how maybe miserable to a certain extent my life is, because there would always be that question presenting itself to me. Tapos hindi ko na masagot. Wala nga naman ngayon pa ako mag-consider ng religious life, diretso infirmary pagkatapos ng formation, So I think that the value of really listening in prayer, and of course, it's very helpful to be accompanied. And I'm not saying this because I'm now working with the Center for Ignatian Spirituality Philippines, where that's one of our offerings, by the way. Pero mahalaga talaga to have someone to accompany you, especially when you are in a discernment. Mahirap yung makinig mag-isa. I think it's very important to be accompanied. If you are a student of Ateneo, the campus ministry office is just there. Nandiyan si Sir Rofel, si Ma'am Rina. Just write them, and I'm sure they'd be more than willing to be of help to you.
Salamat, Riza. Lahat naman kayo nag-offer, di ba? Kahit si Thea mula sa Lasal, sabi niya, kailangan nyo ng kausap, di ba? So, ibibigay natin ang mga huling pananalita sa aking boss. Di ba?
Pananalita talaga. Okay.
Oo, kasi ang ganda-ganda ng ating pag-uusap ngayon, pero boss kita so pwede bang
Sige.
lagumin
Okay.
mo ang lahat?
Thank you very much for this conversation. Thank you very much, Rofel, Thea, Riza, Luz, for accommodating us to this episode, and for your sharing, very moving sharing. Kahit ako, marami akong pagdadasalan mamaya, babaunin to, But perhaps, how would I sum it up, or perhaps pabaon, I think from our different sharings or unique experiences, there's one common thread, We've experienced God as home, and Cenacle has been a huge help, in that, and other experiences we've had, and so God is home, and I would add, I've always said it in some of the sharings or talks or classes, to me, I've discovered God as one who is loving, who is good and faithful, and so God as home is also God as my beginning and my end. and everything in between, whether pandemic or not, whether ups or downs, no, God is there. And so the invitation to our young people, not so young people, to everyone, including ourselves, no, to keep on giving God a chance. No? Give God a chance, make space for God, no, in your life, and to let God in. Let God in. Especially during this time, no, when we are all in heightened emotions, uncertainty of the pandemic, etc. No, give God a chance and allow yourself to be moved, no, to follow that good spirit. Siguro lang yung papaon. And paanyaya, no, as everyone has said, no, campus ministry is there. No, drop us a message, no, whether via email or via our Facebook page or Twitter account, no, and then we'll get back to you. So maraming salamat.
Salamat sa paanyaya na
Thank
maging
you.
bahagi nito.
Yeah.
Ang sarap pakinggan yung mga kwento talaga.
Diba? Ang sarap.
Salamat din, Rofel. Salamat.
Maraming
Anya, thank you.
salamat.
Thank you.
So ngayon naman, tatapusin natin ito sa isang awitin na angkop sa ating kwentuhan ngayon.
In omnibus amare, in omnibus servire, in omnibus amare et servire, Domino, in everything love and serve the Lord. Omnibus amare, in omnibus servire, in omnibus amare et servire, Domino, in everything love and serve the Lord. Omnibus amare, in omnibus servire, in omnibus amare et servire, Domino, in everything, love and serve the Lord. In omnibus amare, in omnibus servire, in omnibus amare et servire, Domino, in everything, love and serve the Lord. In omnibus amare et servire, Domino, in